This was the form before he departed, the last 10 results. Now, not just league form, it included the really disappointing FA Cup exit at Bramall Lane and also going out of the Champions League at home to AC Milan, which they weren't able to score. We're going to show you the underlying numbers as well here, the rolling XG timeline. So let me try and talk you through this. The green line represents XG, chances created, and the red line is XG against. The idea is to get the green line as high as possible and the red line as low as possible. And you can see the line where Conte was appointed, and you saw that impact straight away. Big increase in the XG4 and the drop in the XG against. There was a lovely gap between them until recently, until that reverse fixture against Everton in October, when these lines started to merge and that form slipped away, which tells us, for everything, all the reasons we think he's been sacked, the form was going away, Gary.
Yeah, but that form coincides with the mood and the absence of Conte. Conte was always going to do very well at Tottenham. He was going to achieve what they wanted to achieve, and then he was going to stink the place out towards the end. That's what he does, and that's why I didn't want him at Manchester United, because he has a track record of doing it. What's been happening in the last couple of months is just almost like a confrontation that wasn't needed. They're third, fourth in the league. They could have gone third if they'd beaten Southampton a couple of weeks ago. That's actually where Tottenham should be. I never saw why this needed to be a confrontation. The problem is, the dressing room, I think, had got tired of the Conte way. Conte got tired of the players. He called them selfish. He's called out the owners, and it becomes a mess at the end that just ultimately ends up looking like a real sort of, you know, it's an inevitable ending, and everyone could call it. And there's no surprise here that Conte has gone in this manner at all. And they're still in a good position. He'll go to his next interview, he'll say, I got Champions League football and I finished in the top, and I left them in the top 4. That's what he'll say. He'll say he's done a great job. But the reality of it is, they're picking up the pieces now over the last, obviously Tottenham are picking up the pieces of basically the last month of the season with his number 2.
But he did go down with a parting shot, didn't he? And he talked about the players being selfish and said they don't want to play under pressure. Did he actually have a point?
He will have a point with certain players, but you wouldn't accuse Harry Kane of that. And to be honest, a lot of the time, I think it's lazy punditry to say Tottenham, Spursy, lazy, they'll never do this, they'll never do that. With that squad of players, and you see that 11 that's playing tonight, and as Gary says, if you hang on at Southampton the third, where do you think this Tottenham team should be? So is there a lack of backbone that they're not top of the league? Of course it's not, because they're not good enough to be top of the league. Where Tottenham are right now, 4th position, I think they're slightly overachieving, if I'm being totally honest. So this thing about this team not having backbone, the reason they're not higher in the league is because they're not quite good enough, or they need maybe a bit more extra spent in terms of the transfer market. But the biggest problem with Conte, I think it was a coup for Tottenham to get him. They were in a poor position. They brought in Espirito Santo. It was a disaster. It just didn't work at all. You get Conte, gets them in the top 4, and as Gary said, the 4th right now. I don't understand why Conte ever went there. Because Conte is a manager who wants to win in the first year or two, and that's it, and that's why he's gone right now. The top 6, if you're Chelsea, Man City or Manchester United, you can have a bad season and then rectify it in the summer. Tottenham aren't. Tottenham are like Liverpool and Arsenal, where you have to build. So Arteta's built year on year, and they are where they are. Klopp did the same at Liverpool. Pochettino did the same at Spurs. Conte was never going to do that. So when he complains at the end, what did he expect? That's Tottenham.
I've heard you say this before, Gary, that to be successful, you need a clear strategy. And we heard from Daniel Levy a couple of years ago talk about Spurs returning to a DNA of attacking, entertaining football. But he appoints Mourinho, Nuno Espirito Santo, and then Antonio Conte. Can you be successful if there is not proper alignment within that?
I'd say Daniel Levy's decisions in the last 3 or 4 years have been driven by the fact of the desperation and need, because of the stadium debt, because of the training ground investment. They've got the best training ground in the country, in my opinion, and they've got the best stadium in the country, but that's cost a lot. So he needs to get into the Champions League, which means he's gone for ruthless, hard-nosed killers when it comes to managers like Mourinho and like Conte. But for that, there comes suffering as well. The players in that dressing room have got to show a siege mentality off the back of. They've just been called selfish. Harry Kane's not selfish, by the way. I need to say that. I've worked with him, and you all know he's not selfish. But looking at Levy's record, it was something I saw on social media a couple of weeks ago when this was being talked about. And there was this sort of feeling that Levy's culture, he's never going to be a successful owner of Tottenham. And someone pointed out that actually before he came in the 10 years that before he came in, 9 years before he came in the Premier League, Tottenham were pretty hopeless. Their highest finish was 7th and their average finish was 11th. He's taken them to 2nd with an average finish of 6th, and they finished in the top 4 7 times and got to the Champions League. The big problem is that major trophies, they just want a little bit of a cherry now and then. They want a FA Cup.
And they want to watch good football,
They want to
don't
watch
they?
good football. But to be fair, under Harry Redknapp, under Maurizio Pochettino, it was fantastic football. It was my first few years at Sky. It was brilliant football. It was energetic. It was high pressing. It was, to be fair, throwing the kitchen sink at games. He's now got to the point of desperation of appointing these what would be ruthless managers because he now needs to get in the Champions League. They're doing well off the pitch, Tottenham, but they now, to be fair, need to start thinking about how they look a bit on the pitch.
I mean, this thing about culture at a football club, I'm no pal of Daniel Levy, but when you talk about culture coming from the top, yes, of course, an owner of a football club or a chairman, but the culture changes at a football club through the manager. The culture changed at Manchester United under Alex Ferguson. Martin Edwards has been there before, and he was still the chairman. Ferguson changed that. FSG were at Liverpool before Klopp got there. Klopp changes the culture. Who's changed the culture at Arsenal? Mikel Arteta. Still the same owners, Kroenke, who the Arsenal supporters weren't happy with. And then Daniel Levy had Maurizio Pochettino, who changed the culture at that club, almost won a title, almost got to a Champions League final. So this thing, this big criticism because Conte is gone, oh, it's down to the culture at Tottenham, it's down to